What's going on, Mr. Andy Rice?
How's it going?
It's been some time. I mean, we chat every once in a while through a text here and there, but I think the last time I probably physically seen you in person was probably the last time you were in Nashville at Sinking Ships.
Yeah, either that or Meltdown possibly after. Don't 100%
Okay.
remember.
Oh, I forgot about
it's all a blur in my head these days.
Yeah.
Well, short-lived, but a lot of fun.
Yeah. The interweb says that you were in obviously Physical Challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how long were you in that band for? Was that like your first bad boy?
My first band was my very, very first band was when I was a kid. I was like 13, 14. I was in a band with my little brothers, and we would play clubs in Portland. And my dad would just drive us into town, and it was like very like formative years, like figuring it out kind of situation. And then I was in a couple local bands, regional bands for a while. Nothing that really got going. And then Physical Challenge came. I started this band Inked in Blood with some guys from Portland. That was the first band that like really got momentum, started playing hardcore shows.
So you started Inked in Blood.
Yeah, with two other guys, two, three other guys. And initially it was they went into a more like Christian hardcore direction initially. Later on, initially it wasn't supposed to be like that. It was because I'm kind of not, I'm indifferent, to that situation. And
for sure.
But it at the time, hardcore in the Northwest was extremely leaning in that direction. There were like a ton of great bands that were all like faith based. And we would play with a lot of those bands. And initially, after time, it just kind of started to go that direction, which inevitably led to my exit because that's a heavy scene to be in. And if you're not like rolling with what they want, it's definitely a kind of a shock to your system because people that go to those things really take it seriously and they want to talk about their faith with you. And if you're not on board, it's an interesting situation to be in.
Yeah. I remember like in the mid 2000s when Christian hardcore was really big. It was a big scene for that for a while, Nashville, especially Nashville had a lot of Christian bands come through there often, and I was played with a few of them. Inked in Blood being one of them, actually.
Yeah.
But after you, yeah.
Can I put this on pause for a real quick second while I fix this problem?
Yep.
Awesome. Sorry about that.
Cool. All right. So Andy's a busy guy, obviously. So Physical Challenge. I mean, how'd that band come about?
So when I was doing Inked in Blood, we would play with this band called Mark Summers of the Physical Challenge. There's a Double Dare reference. And they were from Corvallis, which was about 30, 40 minutes from where I was living, just south of Portland. And we would always play shows in Portland with them, or sometimes we'd go down to Corvallis. And so they were already kind of a band that was going, but they had this much longer name. And their drummer left, and their singer called me and was like, "Hey, would you be interested in playing in Physical Challenge?" And at the time, I was still pretty heavy into doing Inked in Blood and going pretty strong with that. But my tastes were starting to kind of change. Like I started wanting to play kind of more straightforward hardcore. Inked in Blood was very much a metalcore band and kind of leaning more in the Christian metalcore direction. So for a minute there, I was in both bands, and we played a couple shows together, and I would just do double duty. And when I joined the band, when I joined Physical Challenge, they had told me that they were planning to shorten the name to just the Physical Challenge, and kind of take it a little more seriously, which was funny because the name itself, even without the Mark Summers on the
Yeah,
front end,
yeah,
is a funny name. And after a while, it didn't really bother me or anything. It just kind of was like, oh yeah, like we're doing this, and this is what it's called. So I joined that band, and we started playing out and writing. And they did have a demo that I wasn't on, but it wasn't like really representative of what the band was doing at that point with me in it. The dynamic definitely changed a little bit. The drummer they had before had a very different style than I did. I had a much more straightforward, like aggressive style. So we were kind of riding on that demo, unfortunately, for a minute, and then we played a show at Reed College here in Portland, and they used to do shows there all the time. They had a big room for like real big stuff, and then they had this small little like arcade room they would do shows in. I used to see the craziest shows in there, like before bands got like real big. The shows would be packed, but I remember seeing like Avenged Sevenfold in like the arcade room with like Atreyu and like Hope's Fall. Yeah, it was nuts. And these are right as these bands are starting to like pivot. So like there's these like rooms built for 50 people are just slammed with like 200 people inside.
yeah.
But we played a show we played a show at Reed College, and we played with this band called The Damage Done from the Bay, and their singer came up to one of us, I forget who, was like, hey, like I really like your band. I'm thinking about starting a record label. You know, we want you to be the first release. And that record label was Rivalry Records. Initially, it was just called Rival. Yeah, initially it was just called Rival, and the record came out on Rival, and then later they changed it to Rivalry. But yeah, it was kind of shocking because he went based off our live show, and it wasn't like shows in Portland at the time weren't like packed or crazy really, like unless it was like going into like the metalcore realm, but like straightforward hardcore shows in Portland, there'd be like, 20, 30 people there. So the show wasn't like packed and people weren't going crazy and like singing along or nothing. He was just kind of going off what he was listening to live, which I thought was impressive, that he was willing to risk like, thousands upon thousands of dollars on putting out an EP for a band that he kind of just met. And our friend, he was doing the label with a friend of ours who lived in Portland as well. So we already kind of knew the other person a little bit from going to shows locally. So that was kind of how Physical Challenge got the momentum. And we went in and banged out the first record, Some Still Care. And it was funny because when the person we recorded with, this is I always get a kick out of this. So the person we recorded this with is this guy, Chris Crummett, who now is like a does like big stuff, like does like Sleeping with Sirens and Dance Gavin Dance, and like he does this like massive stuff. Like I think probably has like a ton of gold records on his wall. I still talk to him and stuff, but for a minute there, he was like the go-to guy for the hardcore bands in Portland. So I recorded like a couple demos with him, and I was in another band for a hot minute called A Taste for Murder that he did the demo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was with some friends of mine from Salem. Salem was about 20, 30 minutes from where I'm at. And they same situation. They had a drummer left, and I was always hanging out with them. So I was like, fuck it, I'll play drums. So there was a minute there where at any one point I was in like 3 bands or 4 bands, just like, yeah. And it's like, when you're younger, you can do that. Cause I didn't have like a career or a real job or anything. I worked at a restaurant part-time, and, I didn't have any real life expenses. So, but inevitably I quit Inked in Blood. I quit A Taste for Murder, and Physical Challenge was the first band that really got legs under it, had a record. We were touring, and we would just tour the West Coast like all the time, just go up and down, pretty much down to LA or San Diego and back. And we did that a handful of times. Eventually ended up recording an LP, and then right as we released the LP, we broke up, which is funny because the LP's called All I Quit. So it was a bummer, but what ended up happening was we went on one West Coast tour. The last West Coast tour we went on was just like one of those tours which everything bad that could happen happened. Like we're dealing with, dealing with van problems. I remember at one point we're helping out some kid that we met in the Bay. We're taking him like to LA or something. And I remember he was just like a fucking total wet blanket. And we didn't really know this guy because back then he was just like, oh, you're a hardcore kid. I'm a hardcore kid. Like, I'll help you. I'll give you a ride to it. But he ended up just being a pain in our ass. And it was just, we had a lot of lineup changes in Physical Challenge, like a lot of guitar players, a lot of bass players, and like alternating things. Cause we were pretty motivated. Me and the singer were like, we want to give this a fair swing. And he wanted to, he was at the time, I'm still really close with the singer. At the time, he was a little difficult to be in a band with, like, and people would be like, I can't do a band with this guy. And I understand now. At the time, I was like, I don't care. He's not bothering me. Like, fuck it, let's go. But my outlook on those types of things is like, I mean, how bad can it really be? But in retrospect, thinking back, I could see how it would be difficult. It was kind of his way or no way. But I think every good band needs one person that kind of steers the ship in that direction.
Rivalry Records, man. They had like, it felt like they were kind of like locking Out Records, right? They had Locking Out had their style, a sound band, and I felt like Rivalry kind of had like a certain kind of like sound and style.
Yeah, it was definitely like leaned into the more melodic hardcore for the most part. Not all the bands are like that. They had this great band called Time for Living that I was like a big fan of because I love, anyone who knows me knows I love New York hardcore, certain beatdown-ish kind of bands, for lack of a better term. I like the heavier, tougher hardcore. Physical Challenge. My big gravitation to Physical Challenge was seeing this band Striking Distance when I was still in Ink to Blood. I can sum up that show with my pivot away from trying to be like in a melodic metalcore emo-ish band. Not that there's anything wrong with that if that's your role, and I still listen to like, I still like the first Poison the Well LP, but
I just listened to it today.
Yeah, but I at the time I saw Striking Distance with Bane, and I just remember thinking it was like the meanest fucking thing I'd ever seen. And like I was already listening to like, getting into Slapshot and getting into a lot of bands because I was first band that really resonated with me was Madball. But seeing Striking Distance, it was like there was no real attitude. There wasn't even a vibe because even with Madball, there's kind of like a swagger to what they do. Yeah. But Striking Distance was like it was just so mean and straightforward. Regular looking dudes, guys look like that they were construction, and like I was just like, this is fucking so hard. And the guy looked. This is gonna sound funny. He did not look. I've met him, and he's a very nice guy. The singer's a very nice guy. Yeah. But if you. At the time, I remember thinking he was so pissed and he looked so unfriendly. And I was like really attracted to that. Like, I kind of like, I'm kind of one of those people that I need to believe that the band I'm watching are legitimate and serious. And they kind of, they did that for me. There's a lot of bands that do that for me. And it's hard for me to watch certain kinds of hardcore with guys on stage that are, that I'm like, not really intimidated by, like there's not a vibe or a kind of a thing that they put out there. And as you get older, you feel less and less that way with bands because I'm older now, so there's some 16-year-old kids up there trying to pose like he's tough. It's not gonna really faze me. But yeah, Striking Distance was the band that kind of wanted me to pushed me into that direction. And so I kind of heard similarities from the Physical Challenge demo that reminded me of Striking Distance, reminded me of Slapshot, like more straightforward, angry hardcore. And so that was really my motivation. On the LP, we start to drift a little in the other directions, but on the EP, on the first EP, Some Still Care, there's, I think it's track 3, called Spit in My Face. That's, I think, the perfect Physical Challenge song. That's exactly like what in my mind I wanted it to sound like. And that's us just like nailing it for sure. Other songs are great, but that's like the quintessential one for sure.
Nice. what got you actually into like playing the drums? I mean, was that your first love of instrument, or was there a guitar involved?
No, it's really funny. I was in sixth grade, and I joined band because
Okay.
up here you have to take a foreign language from middle school onward. You have to take a foreign language, or you have to take a fine art.
Okay.
And I just had zero interest in learning Spanish or German or anything. Like I just, in my mind, I was like not a great student. I was real fucking lazy. So
I
I
hear you there.
I thought the idea of having to learn a second language sounded so daunting to me, even in sixth grade. I was just like, oh my god, I'm already shitty at math. I'm already like not a great student. I don't want to have to put more on the plate, you know. So my plan was, oh, I'll join band and I'll play percussion because like I'll just back and half-ass it, and if anyone who's been in band in a band class through middle school knows it's like it's not very high pressure, they're not expecting you to sound incredible. That doesn't happen until much later in high school and stuff. But so I was in band class and they had a drum set, and I don't know why, but I sat down and the mechanics just kind of clicked for me on a drum set. I was like able to play the drums. Like I sat down and I just like could do it. And I can't play guitar. I can't play bass. I can't play any other instrument. I tried singing once and it was fucking terrible and I hated doing it. But drums is just one of those things. And I'm not like an exceptionally great drummer or anything. I'm like a meat and potatoes drummer for sure. But I learned how to do it. And then, so that's kind of just, it was kind of like, oh, I can do this thing and I'm going to do it. And I would just play drums at the school just for fun and, with nobody. And it wasn't like you could apply that to band. It was kind of like after band would end, I would like get on the drums and like fuck around for a couple minutes. And then this friend of mine, this kid, Lucas Clare, that I still kind of in touch with, he's the one who came up to me and said, hey, I want to start a band. You should be our drummer. And I just was like, yeah, sure. Cool. Like, didn't have a drum set, didn't have anything. I forget what I did. I asked my parents for a drum set and they were like, no, you got to like earn some money. And, cause we weren't like loaded or anything. Like my parents didn't have like supplemental income for like a drum set. So, I forget what I did. I think my dad's a bricklayer. So I probably like worked on some job sites with him and, child slave labored for him to like at least show him that I'm willing to do it. And I probably did a couple other like odd jobs around the house just to get like $5 here, $5 there. Scrounged together like a whopping like $200, and then scrounged together a whopping $200, and then got like a real cheapy like Walmart brand drum set that I just kind of fixed up because it was all I could afford. And that's kind of how it kind of started. And that band with that friend eventually evolved into the band that I did with my brothers, where we started going into Portland, into the city, and playing shows late at night and stuff like that. And my dad kind of helped facilitate that.
What kind of stuff were you all playing at that age?
Like alternative rock, like type of stuff. Like Soundgarden was huge. This was like coming off of the heels of Nirvana blowing up. Like, because I wasn't aware of what hardcore was. In sixth grade, it was just like the more common stuff. But can we pause this one more time?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, we're back.
Cool. So yeah, we were doing like a lot of like 90s covers and stuff. And then eventually we started writing our own songs, and we realized we were listening to everything. I hung when in middle school and high school, I hung with like the skateboarders and the punk kids and stuff like that. So we were getting into all sorts of stuff. And eventually we tried writing our own songs, and they were all terrible. And because I remember our guitar player didn't even know how to play chords. It was just noise. We're just making noise. But eventually kind of started to morph into songs. And another guy came in, our friend Jonathan, who was actually a talented guitar player, and kind of helped guide us into a direction where we could write songs. And my dad was just really a positive reinforcement, like role model in this situation. He was like, football wasn't going to happen. Other things weren't going to happen. He realized it's like, oh, this is something I want to do. Realized I was pretty good at drums. So he booked us shows our first couple shows in Portland proper. Back then, there wasn't a lot of all age spots, and he only only knew people who worked at like bars and like 21 and over clubs. So when our first shows was after playing like talent shows and like local stuff in our small suburb, we played our first show at the Satyricon, which was like the CBGBs of the West Coast for like a long time. It was like the classic punk club, and we were like these little ass kids, and we would show up, they'd let us play, and then they would stash us in the back corner somewhere, and as soon as we were done, we had to leave. Like they wouldn't let us hang out or anything. And then our second show was at this place, Brabati's Pan, and that show was with no, I'm thinking of another show. We played at Brabati's Pan a couple of times, but one of the times we played a Poison Idea. And I remember that being one of the more like eye-opening, like, whoa, like this is some serious shit.
Yeah.
This is wild. And eventually those guys left, and my brother was playing bass at the time in the band. So I had one brother playing bass, and when the other two guitar players quit, I wanted to keep going. And so my dad not forced me, but he kind of nudged me to have my other little brother play guitar. Okay. So it turned into like the fucking Jacksons with like the three of us. And he was like all go, no quit. We got to play like some really wild stuff. And there used to be this thing up here called North by Northwest. That was like the South by Southwest of the Northwest. Okay. And they used to have like a North by Northeast. We did that for 2 years in a row. And it was a really unique childhood to grow up in. And that kind of existed up until that kind of morphed and existed up until like, I want to say a sophomore, junior year, something like that. I wanted to do something else. It's like me and my brothers were all gravitating into other directions or moving into other directions. Just like my brother Ben, the guitar player, he's really into blues and jazz, and still is a prolific full-time touring studio musician, session musician. Yeah, he still is always out playing, gigging. And then my other brother Tommy, he got more into got a more modern kind of like metal and rock. And I had discovered hardcore by this point, and I really wanted to start a hardcore band, and I just couldn't find anybody that would do it. And so I kept, especially in Newburgh, like I'm sure now it's easy to start a hardcore band. It's so in vogue. Yeah. Everybody fucking wants to be in a hardcore band. But back then, like it was a very not well-known thing. It was everybody wanted to be in a punk band or an alternative rock band. Mm-hmm. And there was a message board I was in that I posted. I was like, I wanted to be in any band. And I was like, hey, aggressive drummer looking to start a band, like sounds like Countervail, Snapcase, and I want to say maybe Strife was on there. And hoped for the best. And by this point, I'm already going into shows with some older friends of mine that lived in the city would take me in to see hardcore shows and punk shows. And my parents were just willing to let me go. It's just like, you're not 18, but go ahead and come back at 2 a.m. Who cares? And some guys reached out, and those guys would eventually end up being Inked in Blood. And my dad had built a studio in the back of our house for me, not a studio, but like a rehearsal space that he soundproofed for us to all practice in, me and my brothers and anything we were doing. So it was, him and my parents really like motivated us to like push the music thing for multiple reasons. Like the town I grew up in is a big wrestling and football town, and they didn't want us to end up like that, like never leaving this town, never leaving the state. And they kind of knew music was going to be the thing that facilitated that. So yeah. And that's kind of, my one regret is not taking drum lessons, because I still can play drums, but like when I see someone, you can tell when you see someone who's taken lessons and really honed in their craft. And I just kind of get up there and just do it. And I'm still that way with my band now. Like people are like, oh, do you stretch and drink water and do breathing exercises? I'm like, I don't do any of that shit. I'm usually like a couple drinks in. Like I'm like, oh, this is fun. Let's have some drinks and play some music, and hopefully it doesn't sound like shit.
So when I met you, like I said, you were in Sinking Ships, and that was how did you get in that band? And was this already established band?
I got into Sinking Ships because they were based in Seattle. I was living in Portland, and Physical Challenge went on a tour, and we needed a guitar player. And one of the guitar players for Sinking Ships, he filled in for like a West Coast tour. So me and him became friends, and he actually brought a friend of his with him on the tour, and that ended up being the singer for Sinking Ships. And we all kind of just clicked and, started talking, and they had already recorded a demo, and we were doing things and playing locally, and had done gone down to like California to play a show. He ended up leaving, and I don't remember how the conversation started, but so at some point I get asked, hey, do you want to be in Sinking Ships? And I was, at the time, Physical Challenge was breaking up and winding down. And I was in this one band called No Secrets Between Sailors, which was kind of like, for lack of a better term, like smart hardcore. It was like a 3-piece and kind of hard to describe, but it was great. I still, it's one of my, I think, the best demos I've ever played on, and I loved being in that band. But they weren't really motivated to like go out and get it and tour. There was, I don't remember why, but and I kind of saw that Sinking Ships wanted to do that, and I remember asking Paul, their guitar player, I was like, are you going to tour? I want to tour. Like I want to go out, and I want to go to the East Coast. I hadn't been to the East Coast at that point. I wanted to go to Europe. I wanted to do all that stuff, and I didn't want to sit around in Portland and wait for it to happen. I knew I was going to have to go do something else. I thought Sinking Ships was good, but self-admittedly, it wasn't my brand of hardcore that I really listened to at that time. Like I wasn't really big into melodic hardcore at the time. I liked it. I didn't think it was terrible. Like melodic hardcore was bad, but I was always trying to start something heavier when I was in Portland. It's just everybody at that point wanted to be in like a mosh metal band, sound like, or like a techie metal band. And I was like, I want to be in a band that sounds like Death Threat, or I want to be in a band that sounds like Madball. And like nobody really grasped what I was doing or what I wanted to do. So eventually, when that opportunity came, I was like, yeah, fuck it, let's go. And I just packed up and moved to Seattle and lived on a couch, someone's couch, one of the guitar players' couches for a while. We all lived in one house with the exception of our singer for a minute. Yeah, that was kind of it. And then it was funny because I remember showing up to the house they all lived in. It was around the time I went to a festival up in Seattle with some friends, and I was like, oh, after the festival, I'll just stay in Seattle. Like, fuck it. And I remember showing up and one of the other housemates seeing me and going like completely lost and confused as to what I'm doing there. Kind of, you mean, he was like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, I guess I live here now. Like, kind of, I stayed there for a couple of weeks, eventually got on my feet and got a job and all that stuff. But yeah, that was like dumb luck, that luckily those guys, didn't think I was terribly annoying or dumb, and we're like, yeah, like he wants to work and he wants to play drums, so fuck it, let's go. And that's kind of how that all shook out. And then it was like fast from there. Like I toured with that band a lot before I even recorded it with them. Like,
wow, okay.
Yeah, eventually ended up recording a song for a comp, for a Revelation Records comp, and then just was riding on that for a really long time. And then eventually ended up doing the LP and toured a ton with that band, like US and Europe, and just kept touring and kept touring. I remember you booked a couple of the shows.
Yeah,
I think you booked all the shows.
Yeah. You're saying you were wanting to see other places, and I mean, Sinking Ships, you got to see a lot of places, huh? Like, did you guys make it to Japan?
They ended up going to Japan without me, only because I by the time that happened, I moved to Boston because Sinking Ships was kind of winding down. Later on, that happened much later, but they were winding down, and I had an opportunity to go to Boston and become a booking agent, or book bands as a job for Deathwish. And so it was kind of like similar situation with Sinking Ships. It was kind of like my opportunity to go somewhere else, live somewhere else, like away from home, because I kind of, in the back of my mind, I knew if Seattle didn't shake out, I could always come back home to Portland and kind of regroup. But moving to Boston, it's like, it's not as easy. It's like, that's such a huge distance. So it was a real, like, kind of jump in the deep end situation. And when that happened, I didn't really know what I was doing either. So it was just like, Deathwish were just, hey, just keep our bands on tour. And through Sinking Ships facilitating it, the relationships with people, that's how that kind of morphed into me being a booking agent. It was just, working with all these bands that happened to be on Deathwish.
Before you were doing Deathwish, you were booking bands as well before that, correct? Like, or no?
Yeah, in a way, how that kind of happened when with Sinking Ship, when I was in Sinking Ships, like I said, I wanted to tour, and with Sinking Ships, after the first 2 tours, we did a West Coast tour, East Coast tour, Shook Ones. When I came back, I kind of wanted to tour more, and I was kind of just, I'll figure this out. I'll make the contacts. I'll book the tours. Fuck it, And so it was just because I really wanted to stay out on the road, and I love touring. I mean, I can't do it now like the way I did it because I'm an old, broken down old man. So sleeping on someone's floor is not by choice if it happens. Yeah, that's kind of how that happened. So I would book Sinking Ships, but I would always I started booking this with other bands. So I'd be like, okay, I'm going to book this tour and I'm going to book it with another band. It's like, oh, Shook Ones wants to do a tour. Or I'd reach out to like, Ruiner, or the big one, the big pivotal one was I booked a tour with me and with us and Shipwreck, and we needed a headliner or a third band. And I remember it was a big drama because it was supposed to be someone else. I forget who it was. And Blacklisted reached out because they were looking for a tour. And it's a funny story. So when I'm a huge Blacklisted fan, I think they're like one of the greatest hardcore bands, like across all generations of that band. I think they're just really impressive, and was a huge fan back then. Somehow I had the singer's number. George Hirsch had his number. I had never talked to George really, like outside of like we had crossed paths on a couple tours here and there, but somehow I ended up with his number, and I had it saved in my phone. And it was Thanksgiving 2006, because the tour that tour was January 2007. So Thanksgiving 2006, at Thanksgiving at someone's house in Seattle, and my phone rings, and I look down on my phone, and it's George Hirsch, and I'm like, oh my God, like, so someone gave him my number. And I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, I remember looking at everybody. We're like at the table. I remember looking at everybody going, I got to take this. Like, bye. I step out, and he was like, hey, I heard you have a tour. I heard you're looking for somebody. Will you, can we do it? And I was like, yeah. Now, mind you, at that point in time, I wasn't really asking for guarantees, because that was like a really cool era. I lucked out. I kind of developed in an era where that wasn't 100% necessary. Like I'm sure it helps, but
for sure.
But there was just common. I was just a hardcore kid. I wasn't really an agent at that point. I was a hardcore kid asking other hardcore kids to do shows. So I'd be like, I knew I could call you to handle Nashville, and I knew I could call Mike Parsons in Birmingham, or Spence Gooch in San Diego. There were people, and that you knew you could reach out to them. They knew you knew that they would book you a show, and that they would take care of you, and they weren't going to rip you off. And that was great. I really lucked out there, because I'm sure now it's not like that. It's either very, very pro core, or you're getting taken advantage of, or it's both. But if you go to Philly, Joe Hardcore is going to book your show. He's going to take care of you. I don't think I've ever, as a touring band, asked Joe Hardcore for a guarantee. I don't think I ever asked you for a guarantee either. It was just kind of like, hey, well, whatever you got, fair shake at the door.
Yeah.
But Blacklisted, I wanted to make sure this shook out well for everyone. So, and it wasn't pressure by them. I just kind of asked them. I was like, well, what do you guys usually get a show? And they're like, oh, like, $200, $300 or something like that, And I was like, okay, cool. And that was kind of it. And so they jumped on the tour. I had to call all the promoters and be like, hey, Blacklisted's going to do it. You think we could aim to get this much money? And they were all like totally cool with it. And we're like, yeah, absolutely. Like, we'll take care of you, and no pressure. Very like, I hate using the word community, but that's what it more or less was,
Yeah.
and everyone took care of each other. And that tour ended up being the first real like package tour that I was like, okay, this is something I can do. And later that developed because I booked a tour for Blacklisted, Living Hell, and Cold World
Oh,
to
wow.
Sound and Fury. I booked like 2 or 3 tours that year, that summer. One for my band. We did a tour with Have Heart and Soul Control.
Oh,
Blacklisted,
nice.
Living Hell, and Cold World, same tour, and they were all touring around. Uh, they were all touring around Sound and Fury at the time. And then another tour, which is totally escaping me right now, which is a bummer. I'm sure
Damn.
somebody's going to listen to this and go, "That was my
Yeah.
fucking tour." But that's kind of how it happened, and that's what facilitated the Deathwish conversation. Was they kind of saw that a bunch of the bands they worked with were touring, were staying active, and they just kind of looked. Trey McCarthy from Deathwish is the one who called me and talked to me about it, and he said, he was like, I just kind of noticed a lot of our bands were touring because bands at that level weren't touring like they are now. Like bands are always on tour now, but
Yep.
it was definitely an eye opener, or like, made you kind of do a double take. If you're like running a label and like 7 of your bands are on tour, you start asking questions. Well, who's doing all this? It's like when
Yeah.
my name started getting thrown around. So Trey reached out to me and made the offer. And by the time that conversation reached its conclusion, after a couple months, Sinking Ships was no longer going to really be a full-time functioning thing. I was, didn't like my job in Seattle. The girl I was dating in Seattle sucked. So I, that she didn't suck, but that relationship was falling apart. And it was over. It was just like, okay, like I'm out of here. And it was like on a whim. Like it was on a Monday. I moved on like the following Thursday. Like I just booked a one-way flight and got the fuck out, and that was it. And so,
Well, when you move out, before you moved out there for Deathwish, when you're doing this, booking on your own, I mean, did you make it? Were you making a couple dollars from doing that? Did you have like a fee that you would charge people to do your tours?
no, I didn't.
Ah,
That's the funny thing about it is I never made any money. Not serious money. Like
yeah,
before Deathwish, I made no money. Like I didn't charge any bands because around that time, making money in hardcore was like shunned. Like
yeah,
nobody really wanted to know, and people did do it, and you did make some money, but the concept of having an agent was still like, I got a lot of shit from bands and from people just being like I think they were under the impression I was like taking advantage of bands and getting all this money. They have no idea. Like Blacklisted, Living Hell, Cold World tour, I didn't charge those guys. Like I just wanted to book a Blacklisted tour, or later on, even into Deathwish days, I was always, I was starting to make a little bit of money, but my job, Deathwish paid me to keep their bands on the road. I started booking bands outside of Deathwish, and even then, it was like pulling teeth, because even if I really wanted to force the issue, they didn't really have money to pay me, because if they were making money at shows, they're losing money on merch, or they're losing money on their
yeah.
their van. But it was always comical to me, because I definitely had a few bands that would give me a hard time, and they had no idea, and I never corrected them. I just was like, okay, like, they would think I'm like, oh, you're taking advantage of bands, or you're a scumbag for wanting to get paid for booking bands. And I knew a lot of promoters that were in the same boat. People would be like, oh, they're just booking it to make money. I'm like, dude, nobody was making serious money here. Like, so it's why it's so funny now, because it's a business, like
Yeah.
hardcore in the smallest capacity is a business.
As a booker, I mean, you make the route that these guys go on, or do they have an idea? Okay, we want to go from, say, New York to Austin. So you're like, all right, where's the way we can go from New York to Austin to get the most shows, or how would you do that?
Typically, like, you'll kind of like outline a route of like, okay, how are
Mm-hmm.
we going to do this? Like, Are we going to go all the way down and over? Are we going to go direct? Are we going to go up and over? And you kind of ask the band, like, what are some cities you want to hit? Do you want, do you want to make this lengthy? Do you want to make it short? How do you want to, exactly what do you want to do? Generally, everything's in like some kind of a circular situation if it goes well. So typically that's what I would do. And then I would reach out to some venues. When I was starting out as just a hardcore kid talking to hardcore kids, I would just ask them for a date. I wouldn't fuck around because, truth be told, the first 3 months I was at Deathwish, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was not being a booking agent. I was being a hardcore kid calling other hardcore kids because I only booked hardcore bands.
Yeah.
About 3 months in, we shared a building with another agency, and I got a real offer, and an offer is essentially breaks down, the show and the costs and what it is. And I got that from a real promoter who I wanted to book, I want to say a blacklisted show. And I didn't know what I was looking at. I'd never seen one. I'd never done it that way. But this promoter didn't know that. I was faking the funk good enough to where he was like, oh yeah, here's an offer. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, like I'll review this and I'll get back to you. And I took it into the booking agency next door. Took it to this guy, Merrick Jamalowitz. And he's a great agent still, like works at ground control, just an incredible agent. He taught me how to do this for real. Like that's the man who was like, he gave me notes. He coached me along the way. And mind you, like there were other agents in that building who gave a fuck about me. Like they saw me every day, didn't say a word, no advice, no help. Merrick really went out of his way to help me. And pretty much he broke it down for me. And whenever I had a question, he was like, come in and ask me. I'm like, I'm just sitting here plugging away, And so I owe a lot to him and a couple other agents that lived elsewhere. Whenever I, gave me my first opportunities, there's a great agent named Tim Bohr who gave me countless opportunities. He's one of the first agents to treat me as an equal. And he books like big level shit, and I'm like, and I knew who he was. And I remember like my first email from him was a tour offer. I want to say for Bitter End maybe. And yeah, man, he just, guys like that really stick, that's why Merrick is still around and Tim's still around, because they'll treat the people coming up as their equals, and they don't, because they know they've been in those same positions. But yeah, that's how I kind of learned how to do it. And with routing and building a tour in general, it's really just communicating with the band and also managing their expectations and letting them know, like, here's what we're going to try and do. But if this doesn't work out, here's some alternative options we can do. Maybe you want to play Chicago, but maybe you can't get a show in Chicago that night. Maybe there's just too much going on, or maybe there's a competing show you can combine with. So let's play Columbus instead and skip Chicago this time. We'll come back. It's not an exact science for sure. Like you want to give yourself some flexibility with dates. You want to give some flexibility with cities, because it's not always going to shake out in your favor. And a lot of bands don't realize that. I've heard bands complain, say, like, oh, it's just all over the place. Why are we playing Joplin, Missouri? And then it's just like, hey man, like, you can't always get what you want, and in the grand scheme of things, unless you're like selling out arenas, your options are limited. And even then, I'm sure there's guys just like, oh man, I want to book a show at, Wrigley Field, but there's a fucking baseball game. What can I do? It's like, it's a great job. And I there's elements about it I miss. But it was fun. It was a fun job, like building tours and seeing tours grow with artists is one of my biggest, like the biggest takeaways I got from it. It's awesome to work with a band at a ground level and help them grow by touring, because at the end of the day, like I tell people this all the time, you want to be a bigger band, you want to grow, tour. Like it's like all the other stuff, online, internet, social media, whatever. You can be on the biggest label, you can have the best manager, you can have the best agent, but ultimately you need to be out on the road and you need to play in front of people and get people on board. It sounds corny and like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed like approach, like go out there and get it. But if you can do it and you can, take it on the chin and eat shit for a while, eventually it shakes out. And you see a lot of bands coming up now that have done that, did that for a couple years, and it finally started to pay off. Drug Church is the band that comes to my mind because I got to work with them.
Oh,
Those
wow.
guys played a lot of shows and did a lot of tours that were, I'm sure, money and soul sucking. But they ultimately, they kept building and kept building. The shows slowly got bigger, and people started, kind of counted them out. And then eventually one day, it just pops. People just kind of click and start coming to your shows and buying your records.
Yeah, I'm into Drug Church. I like those dudes. So I just opened up my email while we were talking, and I typed in Andy Rice, and some of the tours, all my emails are still popped up because it's my personal email. And one of the first tours was you sent me an offer for a date for Reign Supreme for February 1st of 2008.
Jesus. Yeah. Man, Reign Supreme is one of my favorite bands and a group of my favorite people. I got to go to Japan with them. I filled in on drums for them, and I got to tour with Earth Crisis because I was filling in for their drummer. I was real motivated behind that band because they're the first thing I heard from them was their EP American Violence. I didn't hear the stuff before until I didn't hear that stuff till later, but I remember hearing that song Iscariot and being blown away by that song. I was like, holy shit, like this band is like perfect. Like for me, all bullshit aside, they were just incredible live because they had it locked. They knew that they needed to sound, like, and they always put on the same show, like the same energetic show. They always sounded really good. There were two bands that always come into my mind when people ask me about the best live bands, or actually three bands. Reign Supreme is one of them, Black Breath, and Go It Alone. Those three bands always sounded great live, no matter where I saw them. If I saw them in a basement, it sounded incredible. If I saw them on a huge stage, they sounded incredible. And it was like, it's something that's super hard to achieve. And those three bands just have it on lock. I've been in bands where it's like, I know we sound like shit on stage, where I'm just like, I know this doesn't sound good. But in the end, the hardcore doesn't matter. But Reign Supreme were just a machine. And when I was working with them, there was one year, I forget what year it was, but I booked them over 100 shows. They just toured nonstop. They were just a nonstop touring machine. And one of my favorite moments with them, beyond doing the shows with them when I filled in, was at Sound and Fury 2009. They weren't like the coolest band. They weren't like necessarily in the cool club with like the bands that, that everybody jocked, everybody loved, like there were a lot of bands around that time that people just gravitated to. They were like, I fucking love this band. But, it's like the old joke, like name me a song. They probably couldn't, or, it was just, it was in vogue to like that band. That was just totally fine. Reign Supreme weren't necessarily that band. Everybody that liked Reign Supreme because they loved the records. Mm-hmm. They saw them live. They loved them live. And that band just kept going. And it was just growing and growing and growing.
Yeah.
And in 2009, Sound and Fury, I was on that tour with them out there, and they were like burning out. They did a lot, and it's hard. If you're on the road fucking 6 to 8 months a year, like and you're broke all the time, like it starts to wear on you. And I remember going out, that just kind of the attitude was positive, but I could tell the guys were like, fuck, man, when is this gonna click? When is this really gonna like hit, where we're gonna get big reactions, not just 3 or 4 kids going nuts or people just killing each other in the pit, but don't really care about the songs. They're just moshing the mosh. And 2009 Sound and Fury, they start playing, and the place goes fucking ballistic. And I remember being so psyched because I wasn't playing with them. I just was traveling with them. And I remember being so psyched. And I remember seeing the faces of people side stage who didn't really fuck with those guys, and in the crowd that didn't really fuck with those bands or with their band. But there were the people that were going nuts for them were people I didn't know, people I didn't see at shows every day, people that saw them, in fucking Rancho Cucamonga, or people who saw them in fucking Kingman, Arizona, like just regular ass kids who maybe are just starting to develop their love of hardcore. And Reign Supreme is their gateway band. So they play, the place goes fucking nuts. People are storming the stage. It was like one of the more proud moments I've ever had as an agent that works with a band, because it was kind of like a look, like I told you guys. It was kind of like I told you so. This band is fucking sick, and these guys are like, they command your attention, and now they definitely do. People really paid attention to them, but it wasn't like the clever, cool guy, hardcore guys that loved Reign Supreme. It was the guys who loved aggressive music, that genuinely loved that band. And yeah, I could talk about Reign Supreme for fucking hours. I love that band. I love those dudes too. It's a bummer they're not full time, but some of those guys went on to be like, the singer went on to be an End, which is fucking crushing. So,
Yeah.
So it works out in the end.
So what was one of the funnest bands that you had to book, that you like to book, that you actually,
I loved working with the Carrier.
I was
From
just looking
Boston.
at the email there.
Yeah, they were so much fun to work with. I had a blast with a lot of bands, but the Carrier were just so much fun. Like, they lived nearby, and they made it a point to hang out. Like, I mean, like, I wasn't like, always trying to hit them up or hang out. They were just, they lived nearby, and they'd be like, hey, like, we're coming over, let's go get drinks, and I got into some like the wildest shit with them. Just locally, just hanging out in Massachusetts. They were all just like total sweethearts. And like, those guys, like, I was telling people too, I was like, they were one of the wildest bands I've ever worked with. Like, when people, and I worked with some real fucking out there bands, but those guys they love to party. They genuinely love hardcore. They love drinking. They'll just go out, let's just drink, let's play some hardcore, let's like let's do some damage, yeah, like criminally underrated. And I remember they really wanted to tour with heavier bands. They were like, they wanted to tour Terror and Hatebreed, and like, that was Agnostic Front. That was the shit they wanted to do. And I was always like, hey, you guys should go out with Shai Hulud. You should go out with Killing the Dream, like bands that kind of made more sense for them. And because they made this really like impressive, like beautiful kind of melodic hardcore. And I was really like, really kind of caught your attention if you were a musician, and the songwriting was incredible. But I think it was just wrong place, wrong time. I think if they would have showed up maybe a couple years earlier, around Sinking Ships era, when that stuff was really hot, people really, really would have gravitated to that band. But they were a blast. Like, but yeah, I had some long drinking nights with those dudes. I'd come home, like I'd wake up the next morning, I'm like fucked up. So, great dudes though. I love those guys. I also really, really loved Cruel Hand. Anytime I hung out with Cruel Hand, I'm still really close to Chris from Cruel Hand, and got to go up to Maine with those guys. Those guys were a blast. They were always having a good time. And so yeah, Cruel Hand and the Carrier. A lot of bands. I love a lot of them, but those ones are just sticking out in my mind right now.
Are you currently booking shows still?
No. I came back. I quit being a booking agent in late 2017. Long story, just like more or less my bottle filled up. I dove into it a little bit on another podcast, but more or less I just got put into a weird situation, and I was just like, I think I'm over this. So I just kind of abruptly quit. And I came back for a short time right after COVID. For honestly, for two reasons. One, I had a friend of mine who managed this band, Vitriol, who needed an agent. He needed someone to book shows for him, and I needed money because it was post COVID and I was broke. So yeah. I was working like COVID jobs, and so I started. I came back, started booking for a minute, and I got to work with a bunch of really cool bands. Like I got to work with Vitriol, got to work with Chamber, just a handful of bands. It was a lot of fun, but it definitely started to. I'm not sure if I would have kept going. I got a job offer to do what I do now, and then I kind of just dove into that head first, which I needed to do because what I do now just takes up so much of my bandwidth, and it's something I need to be focused on. So it's hard to, obviously, by having to continue to cut
Yeah.
away, I have to call and like talk to someone and like help them through. But yeah, not now though. Only for my own band. Like I'll book a show. Like I booked a show today for my band in April, locally. Just I still love putting stuff together, but doing it locally and low key, kind of keeps the fun in it, while I can focus on my other career based job that I have now. But I still think about it every once in a while though, or
Yeah.
being a show promoter, but I don't know. My tastes have changed, and like the hardcore and the music, hardcore metal punk that I like isn't exactly like the most money making, like ticket selling stuff, and that's being an agent. The promoter is the shitty end of the stick, because if you're an agent, you're getting paid regardless.
Yeah.
But promoters, as there's a lot of risk involved, and
Yeah.
sometimes even the biggest bands, I've gone on tour with bands that they'll do 30 days and there's one show that's just bombs, and everyone's kind of scratching their head like, wait, they're doing 500 tickets all other 29 shows, but for some reason there's only 20 people here. What happened? And that could be anything. It could be a fucking baseball game. There could
Yeah.
be, that's one of the hardest things about music, not just hardcore
Yeah,
music,
for
that
sure.
is hard for people to realize is you don't hold a candle to Memorial Day and people barbecuing. You don't hold a candle to the fucking Raiders playing. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
like if you're playing in California and the Raiders have a game, like, yo man, just take the day off.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's talk about this band you're in. You're in a band called Suffer, correct?
yeah, Suffer. So when I quit booking in 2017, I moved back to Portland. And I was living in Portland. I was doing concert production, which was just the logistics of running the show, and I did that for a couple of years. And I was doing a couple bands. I did a band called Ladies Night with the singer for Physical Challenge. Lasted maybe 6 months. Did a couple shows. Got to play with Slapshot, which was a plus. And
Oh,
then I kind of
nice.
just because I'd never played with them, and I was like, I kind of forced my way onto the local the show locally. I was like, I want to play with Slapshot. If we do one thing, I want to just be Slapshot. And then I did a band called Hostilities. That was already kind of
Oh,
an
yeah,
established
yeah,
band.
yeah.
Yeah, and that was just an odd one. I think I just missed playing drums because when I lived in LA, I didn't play drums for anybody. I lived in LA for I think 8 or 9 years, and the last band I was in prior to that was a Storm of Light in when I was living in Boston. And then when I quit that to focus on being like a real agent and be, I kind of saw this was my opportunity. I didn't play drums, sold my drums, moved back to Portland, and I just kind of got that itch again. And I got asked by the guys in Hostilities because their drummer had quit, and I was like, I'll be totally transparent with you. There's a couple drinks in, and if you give me a couple drinks and you start talking about hardcore with me, I'll probably say yes to anything. So, so I'm just talking, bullshitting with these guys, and they're like, our drummer quit. And then my girlfriend, now wife, was there. And I think she saw it coming. She was like, oh no, here it comes. He's going to join Hostilities. And I was like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. It was totally out of my scope because those guys were more into like modern metalcore, I guess modern hardcore, and I have a very at this point, like I lean more into like the classics these days than anything. I'm listening to I like Killing Time, I like Agnostic Front, I like Madball. These guys don't have a point of reference for that, so it was a little bit of a battle figuring out what worked, but eventually got the wheels turning. Did a record on Bullet Tooth, which is the guy from Trustkill's other label but I think now he's doing Trustkill again, so I'm not really
Yep,
sure.
that's what I saw.
Yeah, I got the rights back, so good for him. But he did a record for us, and it was fun. It was cool. Got to play this hardcore, which was another thing that I had been to but never played, so it was great. And like, you know, Joe did me the solid and put us on, and it was fun. It was cool. Half that record is fire. The other half's garbage. Is what it is. Like, you know, wrote some garbage. Every record I've ever been on, there's some stuff on there that I'm just like, this sucks. I don't know why we did that. The Hostilities record is real plain and simple. We wrote songs built solely for moshing, like, and then the other stuff that's good is stuff that naturally kind of came to us. But you know, I'm 40 something. I'm 41, so I'm not gonna, like, you know, mince words or be like, oh, every record I do is fucking fire. It's not. It's about 50-50. But yeah, I did Hostilities and then quit Hostilities just due to personal reasons. And then I moved back to Newburgh, where I grew up. Took over my parents' house. Is where I'm at now. We have like a big property, so I'm on one half of the property. Me and my wife are on the other half of the property. And I grew up with this guy Cody, who I've been friends with for like 25 years. Like, he was one of the older guys that would take me into the city for shows, like kind of helped me learn how to skateboard. Just like one of those guys, you know, the older guys that, you know, kind of gives you your first beer,
Yeah.
you know, smoking with you for the first time. Moved back, and he really wanted to start a band. And he was like, I want to start a band. And I was like, fuck it. Yeah, let's do it. And we were talking, and he wanted to play drums. He was a drummer. I was a drummer. And I was like, well, like, I don't know, like, we will play drums. He's like, I really want to play drums. And I was like, okay, fuck it, I'll sing. So so at the time, we were called All Will Suffer, and that came because I'm a big Shadow Drum fan. I love Shadow Drum.
Nice.
So I was listening to Shattered Realm, and that's kind of where I got the name from. And I was like, All Will Suffer. Yeah, fuck it. You know, I hate naming bands. I'm always terrible at it, but that seemed to kind of work. And so we did a couple shows with me singing. I learned real quick that we did a demo. I learned real quick I do not like singing, for multiple reasons. One, it's a totally different muscle group. Like, I applaud singers that have been doing it for years that really embrace it, because I remember the first time I sang, I was like exhausted. I was just like, oh my god, this is the fucking worst pain I've ever had. And also, I don't do like the typical rock star stage banter stuff. I'm kind of like go up there and say sarcastic shit kind of guy. And that became problematic because I'll like go up there and talk shit. And that's kind of what I did for the couple shows we played. And the guys were kind of bummed because I just, you know, they wanted someone with a little more, you know, typical hardcore, you know, move your ass type shit. So kind of kept going. It started to create some friction with me and my friend Cody. So he left before it became too much of an issue, because we've been friends for so long. He's like, hey, look, I don't think this is the right fit for me. And I was like, this is perfect, because I don't want to fucking sing. So I was like, I told the guys, I was like, I'll play drums. We'll get another singer, and we'll just shorten the name to Suffer. And all good, new band. Like, let's move on. And so that's what we're doing now. And we recorded 4 songs. We released 2 so far. We're going to finish the other 2 here shortly. And just playing locally and having a good time, and you know, kind of taking it as it goes. Hardcore is has a very different landscape now than when I was in a band. And I'm definitely not, you know, I have like responsibilities at home. I've got a job, a wife. You know, my wife will kill me if I was like, I'm going to go on tour for 30 days. She'd be like, no, you're not. What are you talking about? But in the same breath, I don't want to either. Sleep. I did a little bit of touring with Hostilities, and I remember just being like, yeah, this hits a little different when you're old. So yeah, it's just a fun thing we do locally, regionally. Might do some stuff, other stuff, if there's a demand for it. A big thing I don't want to do is stand in the way of progress and be in the way of younger up and coming bands that could, take opportunities and really run with them. So that's one thing I really don't want to be. I want to avoid that at all costs. So, we'll do things as they come if they make sense. But there's a lot of bands in Portland, the Portland area, that are young kids, young people who are going out and like, need those opportunities. And I don't want to be like the old man midlife crisis band that like stops them from getting on a show. There's one band in
um,
particular from Portland called To the Teeth that I really like, and they're like actual young kids, like not even 18 or something. Like they're fucking young
wow.
as shit, and they do guerrilla shows under the bridge in Portland, under a bridge in Portland. And I remember the first show we did with Suffer with the new singer, and me on drums. We played one of their shows. They asked us, and we're like, "Yeah, that sounds fun." And I thought they maybe had like permission to do it or something. And
Oh
after the
no.
show, I asked them, yeah, I asked them, I was like, hey, like, so who like greenlit this? It's great, like, how did you make this happen? And they were like, oh, we just show up with a generator and go. And I'm like, that's so wild. But shit like that's cool, I think that's the kind of attitude you need to have. And they're just up there doing their thing.
Well, remember during COVID in Los Angeles, they did those shows underneath the underneath the highways.
Oh yeah.
You remember the with
Oh
like
yeah. I remember people being big mad about it. And I was like, they were like, this is fucked up, right? And I'll be like, dude, I'll be real with you. If I still lived in LA, I would be in that crowd pounding a tall
yeah,
boy and probably smoking weed. Like,
yeah, yeah,
it's
because
like,
they were they
that
no they did one. I think they did one in LA, obviously, and then they did one in the Bay Area as well. They did one of those guerrilla
yeah.
type shows like that. That's cool though, man.
Yeah, I think that stuff's so like it looks so cool and like so much fun. And I I like that element of hardcore, like I like it when things are built to be like they don't need to necessarily be totally dangerous, but that felt like legit, like genuine and legit. And I'm sure like, later on, like, some music industry nerd like myself probably saw that and was like, how can we recreate that or something? But I thought it was really cool that, that came together organically and I remember
Oh
seeing it
yeah.
on the news. The one in LA was like on like CNN or some
Oh
shit.
dude,
And
it
I was
like shut
texting
down the
somebody.
interstate.
I think this shit's cool as fuck. I mean, the thing I've always say is like when I toured, I didn't remember playing in the rock club. Like I don't remember playing like John's Rock Club in fucking like Tulsa. I remember playing cool DIY spaces like Shea Cafe or Gilman, or I remember playing house shows. I remember every show I played at Cave Nine in Birmingham, Alabama, like
Wow.
because those places were so cool and so unique. And you know, clubs are fine. It's cool. Clubs serve a purpose and bars serve a purpose, but unless they're doing something exceptional and that really stands out, or it's in a really unique space, it all like starts to blend in. You're just like, oh, this is a little black box venue. Cool. Like that's fine, whatever. But I have very like detailed memory of playing like unique spaces or unique events where I'm like, this is cool because this isn't me, you know, I don't feel like a puppet up there just like dancing. I'm like, okay, time for the hardcore show, and like I'm playing under like we're being lit up by a Miller Lite sign or whatever.
Were
You know.
were during that time, were you drinking back then or no?
Yes, I was straight edge between 18 and 22.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's
Um,
about right now.
yeah, no, that was like that's about the right time. No,
Yeah.
it was actually it was pivotal for me because that was the era in my life where I needed that direction. I needed that. I like had I drank around that time, I was still kind of living. I was still living kind of in the same small town or I was at least around enough that I could have gotten sucked into a lot of like nonsense that would have kept me here, and I would have never traveled or toured or done anything I'm doing. Like my trajectory of my life would have changed drastically had I not been straight edge around that time. When I broke edge, it was a very deliberate, on purpose thing. I wasn't like bummed or sad or crying or anything like that. It wasn't like this big life altering thing. I was sitting at a bar and I was like, I just joined Sinking Ships. We just announced we were going to the East Coast. I'd never been to the East Coast. And I was very content and happy, and things were going really well. And I was like, you know what? Fuck this. Because I drank before 18 when I was like,
Yeah.
a kid. But I was like, I'm gonna have a drink with my friends. Like, I think this is time, and I'm not as passionate about it as I was years before, because I had my phase where I was like, I do the big fat Earth Crisis X's, and like go to the grocery store and all that stuff. But I had a very reasonable conversation in my head about it, and I was like, you know what? I'm an adult. Things are great. I'm gonna enjoy this. I'm gonna have some fun, and yeah, that was it. I don't understand people who break edge when they're like at their lowest. I'm like, why? You just gonna make it worse. Like, pull it together. But yeah, I say this as I'm drinking a Tecate, so
it's all right. I'm almost on 2 years of not drinking.
Awesome. Congrats, man. That's great.
Yeah, it was probably one of the hardest weeks of my life when I quit drinking. That shit sucked because I'd been drinking since damn near 18, and I'm 49 now, so that's a long period of life that I was drinking, but fuck it, but I'm Cali sober. That's the word. Cali sober.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think no, it's great. I mean, I do hard breaks sometimes where I'll be like,
yeah,
I'm gonna take like a month off or 2 months off just because I'll just have like a heavy night where I have maybe too much fun, and I'll be like, I'm gonna take a breather. It's been it's been a year. One day off will do me good.
yeah. So you said talking about touring and whatnot. How was touring Europe? How was Europe in general?
Europe's great. It's like a totally different attitude and different vibe over there. I think it's because trying to make this not sound like I'm like pitching like travel to Europe, but arts and culture over there is supported like from everybody, from everywhere, from what I could gather. When we would play certain clubs, they were like refurbished, we played like a refurbished army base kind of, or airplane hangar. They don't really like, it wasn't built for a venue. It was something else, but or like we played a couple shows where the event was subsidized. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
For from like the city or or the state or or the whatever the government in some capacity, and then they just treat you great over there. Like, people are excited. They feed you, and they don't give you just a buyout. They don't just like, oh, here's some cash as a buyout. Go fuck yourself. They'll like prep food for you. And they'll have like sit downs, have big meals, and at least when I was doing it, I mean, maybe it's changed, but and all the shows were memorable. Everybody worked with was extremely nice, and the kids were very supportive and knew all the lyrics and sang along, and everybody was having a good time. And I don't remember having any any kind of a bad time in Europe. And I went a couple times with a couple different bands. I went twice with Sinking Ships. I went once with Meltdown, and I went with Storm of Light. And all those times I had like incredible experiences.
Wow.
Got to play some awesome shows. They're not all like sold out packed shows. We definitely played some shows, but the interactions we had with promoters and venue owners and people coming to the shows were all very, very positive.
Yeah, I lived in Germany for about 3.5 years, and the only music I saw over there was David Lee Roth and Living Color. So.
Oh shit!
Yeah, actually, my first concert was David Lee Roth.
I mean, that's not a bad one. I would love to see David Lee
No,
Roth now.
he was able to still jump. So I met him earlier that day at like the USO. He was signing autographs and shit. And I was like, "Oh, David Lee Roth, I'm go over here and get my autographs." I had a dollar bill, and he autographed it to Russ, David Lee Roth. Don't know where that dollar. Do not know where that dollar is now. But I have a picture of me and him together. I have like this. I have a big helmet hair, man. My hair was horrible back then. What my parents were thinking. But so what do you do now, Andy?
So I work for this company called Kings Road Merch. For a friend of mine, a bunch of friends of mine have worked there. Just do merch logistics. Pretty much my job is to get the merch from point A to point B, make sure the bands are stocked up, and facilitate sales. And very similar to like doing the logistics as a tour manager or a production manager. Just putting all the pieces together. And I've been with them for about 3 years, and it's been great. And it facilitated a different skill set in me that I didn't realize I had, because when I started, I was coming out of COVID. I was doing production, back to doing production. I was booking tours, and it was tough because I was working like 4 jobs. I was doing production, like small part-time jobs, and I was also booking. So I was real busy, but just mostly because I needed to make ends meet. And Kings Road came along and really like put me in a position that I now have a little more free time. I can do things I want to do. I'm not like, constantly going and trying to hustle to make money. Now if I want to do something extracurricular, it doesn't necessarily have to make money, though that would be nice. But I'm not like burning the candle at both ends, because coming out of COVID, that was rough. I did everything from working at Warby Parker to doing door at a bar, working at Home Depot, worked in a recycling center, sometimes all at the same time. And then, it was rough. So Kings Road really came in and kind of like saved me from that existence of burning myself out. But yeah, that's what I do now. Just, get the merch made, get it to where it needs to get, keep an eye on it, make sure that they stay in stock, that the people selling the merch are doing their job correctly, that the settlements make sense. And yeah, I love it. It's funny because there's times where it's high pressure, and then there's times where it's low key, or frustrating. But any job is, even the ones you love. But I work with a great crew of people. Everybody there is great, and I've known some of those guys for up to 10 years, maybe more. Yeah, great, love it. I couldn't really see myself doing it with anybody else, if I'm being totally honest. Like there's a lot of companies out there that do merch, but really go. I mean, I think it's like a lot of hardcore kids work there, or older hardcore dudes. Really go above and beyond. Even sometimes I'm shocked by how I'm like, wow, you're really, overextending yourself to make it happen for this client. And I find myself doing the same thing too. So that attitude definitely resonates, and I'm stoked to be there.
I think there's a place like that, and there's a merch warehouse or printing press in Nashville that has a bunch of hardcore kids that work there and stuff. I think it's the dude from Living Sacrifice, maybe, I believe.
That tracks. There's a lot of hardcore dudes that work in the merch world, and there's a great printer up in Detroit called Edgeman Printing that does shows. They do Tied Down, I believe, and they have shows at their print house. And I think it's been more recent, but it looks cool. Like it's weird to say, but I kind of put more faith and value in someone from a hardcore background in handling business when it comes to music or really anything than I do a normal person. A lot of the people that I work with on the ground, local sellers and stuff, I know through hardcore. Like I met them through hardcore. We have mutual acquaintances, and they tend to do a better job. And if they don't know how to do it, they will reach out. They'll try. They'll be a little more proactive and self-starting. which is great. Because that's like not a great job. You're essentially selling retail. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
at a show. So it's great when you get somebody who's motivated and kind of, they do, it's that old saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. That's an attitude that I look for and in somebody I'm going to work with on at a city selling locally. But you actually introduced me to one of the Nashville sellers I use relatively often.
yeah, yeah. Starla?
Starla, yeah.
No, yeah, she's cool, man. She's a really cool chick. You know how I met her? She was my Lyft driver one night.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
and
great.
then we just, then we've been talking ever since, But yeah, that's how I met her. She was a cool chick, though. Um, so out of Andy Rice's like everything that you've done with in the music or in what you're currently doing now, what's like the wildest thing that you've encountered?
Okay. Wildest thing. Oh man, trying to isolate it to one because there's a couple that really stand out. One of the things that really sticks out of my head, and I still love talking about. So for a hot minute, I was booking Blood for Blood. They came back. They were doing shows with Billy from Biohazard, not White Trash Rob, because Rob wasn't ready to play shows and tour yet. So I remember getting asked to do it by the then manager, a friend of mine, and I was like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. This was like 2012, I think. And so we booked some shows, and first thing I booked for them was some West Coast dates. And growing up, Blood for Blood had a mythology about
Yeah,
them. There were like stories about that band, and I knew that it was a big deal that they were going to be playing again. And I knew it was not just going to be hardcore kids because Blood for Blood has a universal love from metal guys, punk guys, hardcore dudes, like just, they kind of cover the whole scope because when they were active and they were around, they toured with everybody from Motorhead to Dropkick Murphys to All Out War, to Hatebreed. They did everything. So I booked them some shows, and I booked them in Pomona for the LA, Southern California area show. And show sells out in minutes in advance. And I'm like, cool, I'm going to go out to the show and, hang with the band and do the whole thing. I walk around the corner it's at the Glass House. I walk around the corner and it's just Motorcycle City as far as the eye can see. and serious dudes around. And not just bikers, but like a bunch of just serious guys posted up. And I'm like, shit, like it's intimidating. It's an intimidating thing. So I go into the venue, and the venue is worried because they see that people are posted up. They're waiting, and there's also a line. So people are like motivated. And it's not kids. It's not little hardcore kids or anything. It's like grown-ass men are in line. Grown-ass men are going around to the local bars, getting fucking housed. They're already there they're all there to get hammered, have a good time, party, cause some trouble. They're stoked, how a good hardcore show should be. So I go out to kind of walk the street and I was like, I got to get these people on my team. Because they're coming in, whether we like it or not. And everyone had tickets. There was maybe a handful of people who didn't have tickets. And the handful of people who didn't have tickets wanted to get in. I comped them, let them in, hooked them up, with entry, and got everybody on my team. Had minimal problems with anybody. Had a great time. And I remember I was like, okay, cool. And then Blood for Blood's about to go on stage. The lights come down, and the barricade's shaking like a motherfucker. We had like security guards and stuff because we're just like, this could go so sideways so fast. And I put it in Pomona because at the time, that part of Pomona, there wasn't a lot around because the guys wanted to play LA. And I was like, yo, I know how serious this is. It's a big deal. And there's going to be some serious dudes in the house. So I'm going to put it in Pomona. So if anything happens, it's not like spilling out onto Sunset, in downtown or in West Hollywood or something like that. It ends up all over the news. Did the Pomona show. Lights go down, rattle, the barricades rattling, people are chanting blood for blood. I was just like, fuck, like this is serious this is serious. Like, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, this is either going to be one of the best nights or this is going to be the last show I ever book. And the light, they come out, the lights come up, place explodes. People are just coming over the barricade. Everyone's singing along. No one's fighting. But leading into it, it was tense. It was like, I'm surrounded by big fucking bikers. I'm surrounded by gang members. I'm surrounded by like fucking skinheads. I'm surrounded by, and I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, like this, the tent, and everyone could feel the tension in the air, but it made for like the most exciting situation I've been in. And I was so psyched because pulling that together for Blood was a lot of work. And I'm glad those shows shook out and did well. And they played Oakland, I think, the night before. That was fine. They played Arizona. That was fine. They played Boise with Hatebreed because like somehow I facilitated that. I can't remember how, but Hatebreed was in town or something. But that Pomona show was one of the key moments, but it was also the craziest like leading up to it because I was just like, man, if this goes south, there's just no getting around it. I'm not gonna book shows ever again. So,
how was Blood for Blood?
They were great. They at the time they had Craig Silverman in the band, who is just a phenomenal guitar player, and he's an agnostic front now. Great guy, just incredible guitar player, insanely tight. And I mean, he like the rest of the band was great, but he's like one of the more entertaining guitar players I've ever seen. And I think any band he's in, he holds together. So it was like they sounded clean and tight. And, Billy Bio was great. The whole band sounded incredible. A lot of that, the stuff that facilitated that, the person who facilitated a lot of the stuff was their bass player, Ian McFarland, who's like a world-renowned filmmaker now. He did the Agnostic Front documentary, which is great. So that was a really cool, unique experience. But yeah, craziest. It was like all the way leading up to that, and even the first song. Just remember the lights going down, and I mean, people were psyched. I was like getting goosebumps, and I was like, but I was also just like terrified. I'm like, my name is on all of this stuff. And I remember sending out their contract, also sending out a release form that pretty much started more or less like you will not hold me or the band responsible if anyone dies. Because there was a legitimate fear because these are all the group is like heavy hitters.
Yeah.
And there were no kids there. Nobody was being nice. Like people were moshing serious. We're being very serious about moshing. Did my glasses come? Oh, okay. I got new glasses coming. So we're going to, I'm going to open them up on this podcast. Thanks. But yeah, that was awesome. That was one of the craziest situations, but also the most gratifying because it was just like, it was kind of one of those moments of like, man, I did it. Like I pulled this off. It was a lot of work. But it all worked out. And I was bummed that we couldn't do more, but they're a band that, they're Blood for Blood is one of those bands that's just not meant to stay around forever. I think, those you were either there or you weren't. There's a lot of bands like that I almost wish would stay like that. There's great bands, but it's like, you have your time and your place, and like it kind of goes back to what I said before. I don't want to like stop the march of progress. Hold up the march of progress. Okay, we'll try these new glasses on.
All right,
there we go.
Yo, where's your tiki torch now? Your tiki shirt and a little tiki drink.
I specifically wanted glasses like this because I needed sunglasses. I wanted something with big frames, and I was watching that show, that Netflix show, The Gentleman, and one of the characters, Bobby Glasson, and it has glasses like this.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is
Yeah.
great. Yep. Yep. This was a
he's like
smart
he's,
move.
he's like a mobster now. He need a mustache. Um, yeah, well, you said blood for blood. It's funny because like during the MySpace days, Ian posted up, "Hey, for us to keep this blood for blood MySpace page active, we need somebody to take it over. So, you'll be in contact with me, and you can run the page." So I seen it. I replied, "Yeah, I'll do it. Fuck it, I ain't got nothing else to do." And he was like, "All right, cool, man. Here's the login for it. Here's this." And I was like, "All right, bet." And we talked back and forth for a couple months, and then it just fizzled away.
Yeah.
But it was kind of cool though.
No, there was something special about certain bands, and like Blood for Blood's one of those bands. I love their first album, Spit My Last Breath. I think is like one of the best like hardcore records ever. And it's one second. It's one of those things where I think anyone who knows me knows that knows my tastes in hardcore, and that Spit My Last Breath record is like some of the darkest, most depressing shit I've ever heard, and I'm like, I love it. Like, this is perfect. I like their later stuff too, but it gets a little more like kind of anthemic and sing-alongy. But that first Spit My Last Breath record is just hard as nails and like no fucking around, and that's how I like it. Like I always make the joke. I like my hardcore like I like my 90s rap, like hard and mean. Like I don't want to be taught a lesson. I don't want to be told I should learn to, should read a book or some bullshit. Like I want to listen to something angry and mean. Like I'll be positive in other aspects of my fucking life. So.
What are you currently listening to?
Currently, I've been listening to that local band To the Teeth. They're great just because it's not perfect by any means. They're definitely still developing their sound, but what they're doing is very genuine. And those guys love hardcore. And I remember like seeing them and just being like, fuck, like I remember what this was like before I was old and jaded and, mean. Like I was just stoked to play heavy hardcore. Not hardcore related, but I really like that band Primal Code from Chicago. I got to their bass player is this guy Will Lindsay, who I toured with him. Stormlight Light toured with him when he was in Wolves of the Throne Room, and I love Bolt Thrower. And Primal Code sounds like a modernized Bolt Thrower, more or less. So I loved it. I was stoked. And then I like that band Whispers, good hardcore band that just came out on Flat Spot. Reminds me of that band Kickback from France.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so someone recommended it to me. They were like, I know how much you love Kickback. You should check out Whispers. And I was listening to their new record. I got their new EP a ton. They sound fucking incredible. So when I'm not listening to that, to heavier stuff like that. Oh, shit. No, I've been listening to a lot of the new Nails record. Okay. They just consistently put out great shit. And yeah, I always say some people were just put on earth to write like perfect mean riffs, and Todd Jones is that guy. Like I don't, has never been in a band that I don't like, which is like wild to say, because even like when he went melodic with Betrayed, it was like perfect. It was great.
Yeah,
so I think that's those are what I've been listening to. When I'm not doing that, I listen to a lot of like 90s rap, like when I'm working or something, I'll listen to like Nas or like Cool G rap, stuff like that. Like it takes a minute for me to get into newer stuff. So
yeah, I tend to just go back to what I'm familiar with for the most part. Favorite hip hop or best hip hop album of the '90s?
Illmatic. Yeah, Illmatic.
If I would say West, what if I said West Coast?
West Coast is The Chronic.
All right, that's what I was going with. I was going to go with that.
Yeah. When
two was gonna be Illmatic, but go ahead.
Yeah. I still love Illmatic. It's such a great start to a record, And then the Chronic, when you get through the skits, the songs themselves are fantastic. The
Oh
production
yeah,
is incredible, and yeah, those are like the two top. And it's totally like a gimme. You know, people are like, of course you like those records. Everyone likes those records. It was like, yeah, because they're great.
they're
That's why
good.
everyone
Yeah,
likes them. So,
just the same reason why everybody likes 36 Chambers by Wu-Tang. You know, it's just like there's certain albums that are just standout albums still from the 90s. You know.
exactly.
Well, Andy, I know you got stuff going on and whatnot. I don't want to keep you too much longer, man. And
No worries.
um we can do this again for sure and tell some other stories. But I
Absolutely, anytime.
appreciate what's your band's information?
Uh, I just direct everyone to Instagram. Let me double check to make sure I know the handle.
I'm at Suffer HC.
Is that
Suffer
what it is?
PDX. No, I don't know. Suffer
Oh,
PDX.
it's at Suffer HC. Yeah, I'm a
Oh wow.
terrible band member.
I just took a guess.
Oh yeah, no, it's at Suffer HC. Yeah, we're gonna play some shows, touring. Probably not, but who knows? I've said that about bands before, and then it turns into a much bigger thing. The yeah, we're gonna do stuff locally, possibly go to do some California dates maybe, but right now, just we have 2 songs out on all the streaming platforms, and then we're finishing up top of next month 2 other songs, and we'll probably release those probably top of March, and just playing locally and selling merch and hanging out.
Oh yeah, man. Well, Andy, it's been a good evening talking with you, or afternoon, depending on where you're at. And we'll do this again soon, brother.
Absolutely. Hit me up every time. I get asked to do podcasts every once in a while, but I usually say no. But I was like, oh man, I've known you for so long. I was just like,
Yeah.
I'm doing this one with you, and the last one I did was with Joe Hardcore because I've known him forever. And
Oh, is
just
it already out?
yeah, I did it in like I want to say 2021, and
Oh, I listened to that then. Yeah, I'd listen to
yeah,
that.
yeah. No, it was fun. I tend to only do these if they're like casual and off the cuff, and
Yeah.
I'm not getting asked what my favorite color is. So,
What's your favorite color? Black.
I'm a big fan of baby blue. I can't wear it because I'm like
Tar heel, like baby blue or Tar Heel blue.
baby blue.
Okay.
Tar
Yeah, I
heel blue
can't.
is is a good color, but it's a strong color to wear.
All right. Well, I'll holler at you, man. Be safe.
Awesome. You too. Take care.
Oh shit.